Okay, so we were talking about Malachi 3:3. I believe that we were talking about. Okay. And yeah, so this is from the book of God's remembrance. Okay? So it talks about a little bit about that in Malachi, right before the Old Testament ends. Okay, so so this is a pretty big book. Okay, I do know my Bible. Except my Bible's been a little bit tampered with to a point where I'm not in full agreement with everything that's in the scriptures. Okay, so we'll read the birth and infancy of John, the harbinger of Jesus. Okay, so near Hebron, the hills of Judah, Zacharias and Elizabeth abode. They were devout and just. Every day they read the law, the prophets, the Psalms, which told of one to come, strong to redeem, and they were waiting for the king. Now Zacharias was a priest, and in his turn he led the temple service in Jerusalem. Now it came to pass, as Zacharias stood before the Lord, burned incense in the holy place, Gabriel stood and came before his face. Zacharias was afraid. He thought that some great evil was about to come upon the Jews. But Gabriel said, O man of God, fear not, I bring to you all the world a message of goodwill and peace on earth. Behold, the Prince of Peace, the King who you seek, will quickly come. Your wife will bear to you a holy son, whom the prophet wrote, Behold, I send Elijah unto you again before the coming of the Lord, and he will level down the hills, fill the valleys up, pave the way for him who shall redeem. From the beginning of the age, your son has borne the name of John, the mercy of the Lord. His name is John. He will be honored in the sight of God. He will drink no wine. From his birth he will be filled with the holy breath. Gabriel stood before Elizabeth, and she was in silence in her home, and told her all the words he had said to Zacharias in Jerusalem. Now when he had done the service of his course, the priest went home, and with Elizabeth rejoiced. 5 months passed by, and Gabriel came to Mary in her home in Nazareth, and said, Hail Mary, hail, once blessed in the name of God, twice blessed in the name of the Holy Breath, thrice blessed in the name of Christ, for you are worthy and will bear a son who shall be called Emmanuel. Okay. His name is Christ, for he shall save his people from their sins. When Joseph, so you see, Mary here was 3 times blessed, 3 times blessed. See, just like Noah found grace in the sight of the Lord, Mary found a little bit more than just grace and favor. She was blessed 3 times. Okay? And you notice that John was John was born just a little bit before Christ. But this is to fulfill what Christ said, you know. Or what John said, I'm sorry. He who comes after me, you know. So when Joseph's daily task was done, he came and Mary told him all the words that Gabriel had spoke to her. They rejoiced, for they believed that the man of God, spoke in the words of truth. And Mary went with haste to tell Elizabeth about the promises of Gabriel. Together they rejoiced. So, in this specific situation, I'm always curious to know how this actually went down. You know, in the physical, in the spiritual, in the dream world, online. I don't know. I don't know anything. You know, so I'm always curious to just imagine what it would be like for Gabriel to actually show up and to enunciate these things to these 2 women. Um, So, in the home of Zacharias and Elizabeth, did Mary tarry 90 days. Okay, so this is interesting because it says here that Mary stayed there for 90 days, for 3 months. Then she returned to Nazareth. So to Zacharias and Elizabeth, the son was born, and Zacharias said, Most blessed be the name of God, for he has opened up the fount of blessings for his people Israel. His promises are verified, for he has brought to pass the words in which the holy prophets spoken of in olden times. Zacharias looked upon the infant John and said, You will be called the prophet of the Holy One. You will go before his face. He will prepare his way. So you will go before his face. So right away, John is providing what I would consider is a light for Jesus to follow and to go to and to see ahead of the road, right? So just like God's going to promise a light to us Gentiles, okay? So 2 messiahs. Some people say Ben David, Ben Joseph. Well, I don't think either of those names, but similar, parallel, okay? And you will give knowledge of salvation on Israel. You will preach the gospel of repentance and the blotting out of sins. Behold, soon the day star from on high. Here you go. Here's the Venus. So will visit us to light the way for those who sit within in the darkness of the shadowland, and guide our feet onto the ways of peace. So, in case you guys don't know, Venus, okay, there's what some people say, oh yeah, well, something like Venus on certain dates and times of the year at certain times at a certain cycle of time, there shows up next to it, which you would think, coming from what it looks like to be behind the sun, okay, is what it looks like, almost like a thunderbird or an angel of his presence, or maybe a ship, okay? Maybe a ship that's providing light. Maybe that's beaming down and projecting light. Okay, so, and it will light the way for those who sit within the darkness of the Shadowland, guide our feet onto the ways of peace. Okay? So, the birth of Jesus, chapter 3. The masters honor the child. The shepherds rejoice. Zacharias and Elizabeth visit Mary. Jesus is circumcised. Okay, the time was nearly due for Christ to be born. Mary longed to see Elizabeth. She and Joseph turned their faces toward the Judean hills. And I have a problem saying the name Jesus sometimes, okay? I have a problem with it. I mean, since when do pigs fly? I was just telling my neighbor that. Well, apparently somewhere around me they do. So, went upon their way, they came to Bethlehem. The day was done, they must tarry for the night. But Bethlehem was thronged with people going to Jerusalem. The inns and the homes were filled with the guests. Joseph and his wife could find no place at rest but in a cave where animals were kept, and there they slept. So this is actually the right interpretation of this, because Christ is really the proper term for it is a cave. Okay? It's a cave. So, and there they slept, where the animals slept. Okay? At midnight came a cry, a child is born in yonder cave among the beasts. Okay? And lo, the promise of the Son of Man was born. So what is God going to do in this so with this new covenant, so what does it say in Jeremiah? God's going to take the heart of man and beast and knit them together. Okay? Knit them together. Kind of like a holy beast. Okay? Kind of like a holy beast. That is God's resolution. And it's not going to be a law that's written down. Well, you know, these things and God's laws are going to be knitted onto our hearts and in our minds and in our conscience. And for somebody like God who knows the secrets of the heart, who sees the inside, not the outside, the inner parts, not the outer parts, this is very telling. If your heart isn't producing what I would call grapes, okay? When I think of a heart, I think of a cluster of grapes. You know, cluster of grapes. That's what I think of. Okay, so at midnight a cry came. A child is born in a cave among the beasts, and lo, the promise of the Son of Man was born. Strangers took the little one, wrapped him in the dainty robes that Mary had prepared, and laid him in a trough from which the beasts of the burdens fed. 3 persons clad in snow-white robes came and stood before the child and said, "All strength, all wisdom, all love be yours, O Emmanuel." Well, I don't know if Emmanuel is even the proper term for that either. Okay. So, um, so these 3 clad white robed men, notice they're wearing white, signifying the the righteous deeds of the saints. Um, these would also be the 3 magi, the 3 brothers that were in, Babylon. Okay, and some people say, "Oh yeah, well these 3 are 3 stars represented next to Orion's belt, or on Orion's belt." And I'm not against that by any means. The 3 wise men were the 3 stars. So I'm not against that, but so it's saying here, "All strength, wisdom, and all love be yours, Emmanuel." Now on the hills of Bethlehem were many flocks of sheep with shepherds guarding them. The shepherds were devout men of prayer, and they were waiting on a strong deliverer to come. When the child of promise came, a man in snow-white robe appeared to them. They fell back in fear. This man stood forth and said, "Fear not. Behold, I bring you joyful news. At midnight in a cave in Bethlehem was born the prophet, the king that you have long been waiting for." Then the shepherds all were glad. They felt that all the hills were filled with messengers of light who said, "All glory be to God on high, peace on earth, goodwill to men." And all the shepherds came with haste to Bethlehem, to the cave, that they might see and honor him whom men had called Emmanuel. Now when the morning came, a shepherdess whose home was near prepared a room for Mary, Joseph, and the child, and here they tarried many days. Okay. So, see, some people think that, before Christ left, he was having a baby. He was having a son. He has daughters. He has a bloodline. He has this, he has that. So, Joseph sent a messenger in haste to Zacharias and Elizabeth to say, "The child is born in Bethlehem." Zacharias and Elizabeth took John and came to Bethlehem with words of cheer. So Mary and Elizabeth recounted all the wondrous things that had transpired. The people joined with them in praising God according to the custom of the Jews. The child was circumcised when they asked, "What will you call the child?" And the mother said, "His name shall be called Yeshua," as the man of God declared. Okay, I wasn't born Jewish. You know, I don't know exactly what. Okay, I know they circumcised the child on the 8th day. Um, so this is the 8th day is very special. It signifies new beginnings or a new birth, so to speak, a new birth. Okay, this is chapter 4. Now, Mary took her own son, When he was 40 days of age, up to the temple in Jerusalem, he was consecrated by the priests. She then offered purifying sacrifices for herself, according to the custom of the Jews, a lamb and 2 young turtle doves. A pious Jew named Simeon was in the temple serving God. And I think the word Simeon means, I'm not sure, or Simon means to hear. I'm not positive on that. I think it means to hear. From early youth, he had been looking for the Son of Man to come, and he had prayed to God that he might not depart until his eyes had seen the Messiah in the flesh. When he had saw the infant Christ, he rejoiced and said, I'm now ready to go in peace, for I have seen the King. He took the infant in his arms and said, Behold, this child will bring a sword upon my people Israel and all the world. But he will break the sword, then the nations will learn war no more. Okay, so the sword that Simeon is talking about is that sword that Christ said, I've come to bring division and not peace, but a sword upon the earth and upon the whole world. Okay, and that sword is that dividing, that rod of iron, that rod of God that smites the nations and just completely pushes every enemy back in every direction. That confounds their plans, that stops their plans, that just can totally just breaks and scatters apart and shatters all the enemy. Okay, but see, this is not for war means. You see how Yahweh, okay, in the Old Testament was a man of war. Now the Lord is a man of war in a sense. But the age that we are entering into is going to be an age of peace. No war, no weapons, no bombs, no threats. No hate, no bitter division, no killing. And I pray for that world to come soon and very soon. So, the Master's cross I see upon the forehead of this child, and he will conquer by this sign. Now, this is an interesting saying here. So, the Master's cross I see upon the forehead of this child. And in the temple was a widow, 84 years of age. She departed not, but night and day she worshipped God. When she saw the infant Christ, she exclaimed, Behold Emmanuel. Behold the signet cross of the Messiah on his brow. Okay. So if I was to guess what exactly was on his brow, it would probably be something like that. That's my opinion. Okay, so the woman knelt to worship him as God is with us, Emmanuel. But one, a master clothed in white, appeared and said, Good woman, stay. Take heed to what you do, that you may not worship man, for this is idolatry. This child is man, the Son of Man, and worthy of all praise. You shall adore and worship God. Him only shall you serve. Now you see, the woman rose and bowed her head in thankfulness and worshiped God. Mary took the infant Jesus and returned to Bethlehem. Okay, now if you paid attention to what that man clothed in white said, I would guess he's an elder of some sort. He said the same exact thing. Okay, that that John said. That John said in Revelation. That John said in Revelation. What did he say? He said, I fell down at the angel's feet, to worship. But he said, no, see that you do it not. You see, God is worthy of all praise, not one single man. Because we all are strong as a unit, as a team, as one big flowing machine. So one is not better without the other. Somebody might have gifts of speaking, whatever it may be, speaking to people. Some might have gifts in, writing. Some might have gifts in teaching. All these gifts, as well as all the body, functions all as one unit, with Christ as the head, and the 13 in the middle. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there.